So the Parkland school shooting happened about a month ago, and I've been meaning to do a video for a while after hearing a lot of the conversations going on about why it happened, what we can do to fix it and keep it from happening again, and a lot of people on the news shows, a lot of people in the communities talking about different things we need to do and not do, and some of them are great ideas and some of them are not very good ideas, honestly. So I thought I'd put together my thoughts and do a video on it. It's the first video I've ever done, so we'll see how it goes. But a little bit about my background. I've been a police officer for 27 years. 25 of that was with a suburban police department in Ohio, and 6 of the years I was there, I was a school resource officer. So I've worked in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools in that capacity. I'm also the son of a couple of educators. My dad was a superintendent of schools. My mom was a teacher. I'm a father, I have 2 grown boys, and I'm also a gun owner and a member of the NRA. And I know some of you are probably turning it off right now because you think you know where I'm going with the whole teachers and guns things, but you might be surprised on that. But you're gonna have to stick around till later to hear about that. So anyway, why does this happen? Why do these school shootings happen? I'm not 100% sure. And I think it's kind of a perfect storm of things that have to happen. You have to have the right person, and you have to have the right environment, and you have to have access to firearms, and you have to have some type of an incident that drives the person to do what they do. And I'll get into those a little bit more here shortly, but one thing we do need to keep in mind is it's still a relatively rare occurrence. Okay, I got some stats on the internet, and they're from reliable sources, but there's always different numbers out there, but I mean, these are accurate as best I can figure out. So in the past, well, since the year 2000, there have been 130 people killed by mass shooters in a school. And that is situations where somebody has come to a school with the intent on killing as many people as they can kill. It doesn't include, a gang fight in the parking lot after a football game. It doesn't include somebody whose ex-spouse came to the building and killed them as a domestic violence situation. It doesn't include a suicide that happened in the school parking lot or whatever. It is exactly what happened at Parkland. It is somebody or some buddies that came to the building with weapons to kill as many random people as they can. Okay, so you have 130 people in the last 18 years. Now, the most recent statistics I could find was that there's 130,000 plus schools in the country, kindergarten through 12th grade. And at those schools every day are 68 million people, students, faculty, staff, nurses, janitors, whatever. So, I crunched the numbers, and I think I did it right. It's been a long time since I took math, but there's like a 0.0000, anyway, there's 6 zeros after the point, chances that, or percent of people every year that get killed by one of these school shooters. And if you put that into a 1 in situation, it's like 1 in 6.8 million chances in any given year that you're gonna get killed by a school shooter. 1 in 6.8 million, which is less of a chance of that happening than getting hit by lightning, getting hit by a train, choking on a hot dog, getting eaten by a shark, and certainly, getting killed in a car accident or crossing the road or something like that. I think even fireworks kill more people every year. So anyway, statistically, it isn't even a real concern when you walk out the door that day for most people. I mean, it shouldn't be statistically, but I think the way that it gets blown up by the media and everything, and granted, it's horrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing that happens, and tragic and god awful that it happened. And if it happened to one of my kids, I don't know what I would do. But the reality of it is it is not that frequent of an occurrence, and it's probably not something you should be super sweating every single day when your kid goes out the door and goes to school. But since it does happen, let's figure out what we can do about it. As I mentioned earlier, it takes kind of a perfect storm of things, I think, for this to happen. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I have been around a lot of these children that are in, would be considered dangerous kids, okay? And most of them are broken in some way mentally, and I'm not sure exactly, if they can or can't be fixed. I mean, there's people that think they can, there's people that think they cannot. But since last 20 years or so, with the No Child Left Behind Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act and all the attention to people that have certain diagnoses, as far as keeping them mainstreamed with the other students, it's been somewhat difficult to get these people out of the buildings. And I'm not saying that every one of them should be, but there certainly are some kids in the buildings that are dangerous and probably shouldn't be there, but because of the amount of protections that they enjoy and the difficulty documenting why they should be out of the building sometimes, it does put your average student in a little more dangerous situation, because there are kids that normally would not have been in the building 20, 30 years ago that are now in the buildings amongst the kids every day. So there's that. I think so some type of a mental defect, a broken brain, sociopathic personality. Some of these kids, I know a lot of the fetal alcohol kids and stuff, they never develop any empathy. Okay, so them causing you harm, pain, discomfort, it doesn't really, they do not get any feeling from that. So, and I'm not saying all these kids are dangerous, but if one of them is, the things that would normally deter somebody from hurting somebody else isn't going to work with those people, because they don't have that built into their brain. And there's really no way, once it's gone, I mean, if it never develops, it's not going to develop. You can't fix that past a certain age. So anyway, that's other people's job to figure out why that happens, or whether those people can be fixed. But they're in the buildings, so we got to figure out where to go from there. So the other parts of the perfect storm are more external factors, and one of them, the biggest one I think, is a lack of parental or adult involvement in their lives. And from what I mean by that is, there has to be somebody in a young person's life who genuinely cares about their development as a human being, and that the kid is not just growing like a weed and learning all his values and everything from his friends and social media and the internet and just his own musings as he wanders the neighborhoods. There needs to be adults giving some direction and guidance and helping keep this person on a path to becoming a quality adult. And unfortunately, there is a lot of that missing in this world today. So you're going to have a kid with a mental defect that doesn't have enough parental involvement in his life, or some other adult involvement in his life. And then you're going to have some type of a precipitating event or perceived grievance that this kid has that is going to set him on the path to doing a mass killing. And that could vary from case to case. It could be something simple. It could be he's getting picked on at school, or it could be somebody stole his girlfriend, or he thinks they stole his girlfriend, or it could be he got the idea from a movie. You just never know, because with the broken brain, you can't apply rational thought to an irrational act. I guess that's my point. So now, video games. A lot of people have been talking about video games, and I do think video games can be a factor. And a lot of people are going to say, well, I play video games all the time, I've been playing them my whole life and haven't done anything. Well, yeah, but your brain might be working, semi-right, okay? I know from training with the police departments and training with the military that you can, the brain does learn to do things through simulation. And the brain really can't tell the difference between whether you're in a simulated environment or a real environment, as far as it's developing a skill set. And so some of these first-person shooter games, not only does it allow them to learn to divide their attention, pick out different targets, different threats, engage those targets, simultaneously, or the higher threat first. I mean, it's training the brain for combat is what it's doing. And it's also desensitizing the brain to some degree to the act of killing. In fact, most of these games, you are rewarded for killing. Okay, so again, if you've got a normal brain, you could play it for 20 years and all you've really done is just waste a ton of time. But for a broken brain, it can be actually motivating them to some degree, and also training a skill set that they can later employ when they go to do these things. So it's not the factor, but I think it could be a factor. So all of these things kind of come together, and every once in a while it's going to pop out one of these shooters. Okay, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, that's the question. And it happens with such infrequency that a lot of the strategies that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit would be way too costly and too time consuming to even think about really doing on a wide scale. So anyway, so we talked about how rare of an occurrence it is, and how the school shooter, how they develop, at least in my opinion. So what are some ideas that are getting thrown out there that are just, I don't think are very good ideas? Okay, let's start with metal detectors. It sounds great, but it's a super bad idea. Okay, number one, incredibly expensive. Okay, you would not have to just have one; you'd have to have multiple metal detectors at almost every school in the country, and then those metal detectors would have to be maintained. Okay, I've used them; they break. Okay, you have to have people come out and fix them. They run on batteries; you have to people come and fix them. Okay, you have to train the personnel to use them. You have to have a backup system in case they're not working that day, or in case you get a reading and that you need to verify. Okay, so you have to have handheld ones as well. So imagine that your buses are unloading and you have 400, 500, 600 people trying to get into a school building, which is, I'd say, probably a average size suburban middle school. Maybe might have 600 kids in it. I know we had 3 of them. They all had over 600. How many metal detectors and staff would you have to get those kids in it with any kind of efficiency whatsoever? And you're talking about 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade students that have metal lunch boxes, sports equipment, musical instruments, braces, broken bones with, maybe plates in there. I mean, all kinds of things. And so then you're going to get some girl, some 14-year-old who's wearing some kind of a wire bra, and you're going to have some 40-year-old security guard, frisking this person because they're setting off the detector. I mean, it's just not going to happen, okay? And while they're all stacked up there waiting to get in, they're more vulnerable than they would be anywhere else. I mean, anybody sitting in the tree line out, by the entrance to the school would just have a field day with all these kids stacked up on a metal detector. And what are you going to do about your other entrances, your athletic entrances, and your other emergency exits and things you have around the building? I mean, you're either going to keep those shut and nobody can come in and out of them, but that doesn't keep somebody from letting somebody in and out of them, or passing a gun in through an open classroom window. What are you going to do about after hours? What are you going to do when you have a sporting event, and or a Cub Scout meeting that night, or a school board meeting, or a adult basketball league? I mean, are you going to man the metal detectors then? Because if you're not, then somebody can just bring the gun in after hours and stash it in a ceiling tile somewhere and use it the next day. So it's a feel-good measure that really doesn't do a darn thing about mass shooters. I mean, it may snag the occasional 5th grader who steals their dad's .25 caliber from under the bed and decides he's going to bring it to school and show it off to his friends. I mean, you may snag that kid. But what we're talking about here is mass killing incidences. We're not talking about something that's going to solve every single thing, okay? And I guess while I'm on that topic, when there was the shooting in Newtown, the school district that I worked at the time convened all these committees of people. It had teachers and cops and involved community members, and everybody got to give their input. And what we came up with was cameras and door buzzers and a sign-in system for people when they visit the school. Now, how we got from stopping somebody who shows up at the door with an AR-15 to camera systems, buzzers, and sign-in systems is beyond me. But see, that's what happens when you get a lot of people that really don't know how schools work and how mass shootings work, that are afforded all this input into the process. I mean, school shooters are your students, okay? So if a student shows up with a backpack full of pistols and they bring the buzzer, they're going to get buzzed in, okay? And then your camera system can record them as they shoot everybody inside. Or they just show up with the rifle and shoot through the glass door with the buzzer on it and come in anyway, whether you buzzed them in or not. Or they piggyback a parent on the parent's way in. I mean, those are just examples of things that are futile. And we're either trying to stop, prevent, or minimize the damage that these mass shooters do, or we're not. okay? What we come up with isn't going to be a fix-all for every single thing. We need to be laser focused on the issue of mass shooters, mass killers coming to a school, okay? So that's where I'm coming from with this whole presentation. So anyway, metal detectors, no, okay? Armed teachers. I'm a concealed carry instructor. I haven't taught any classes yet, but I am certified to do it if I wanted to, okay? I just think it's a bad idea, okay? As a police officer, I responded to multiple calls where people have left guns laying around in restaurants, and on the toilet paper dispenser at the Panera, or in their jacket pocket, hanging on a chair at a store, at a restaurant, or they lose their purse and it has their gun in it. I mean, there are a lot of responsible gun owners out there, and there are a lot of irresponsible gun owners out there. And I've got to believe that teachers in general are probably going to fall right along the average of everybody else, or maybe a little bit worse, as far as their caution when it would come to carrying guns around. And if only 1/10 of 1% of all your school teachers every year leaves that gun laying around somewhere in the school at one time or another over the course of the school year, with 130,000 schools, which means there's probably at least 1.3 million teachers or more, even at 0.5%, you're still talking about 1,000, 2,000, I don't know, I'm doing this real quick in my head, times a year where a teacher's going to leave a gun laying around in the building somewhere for some kid to find. I mean, it's just kind of a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. You're not going to be able to keep them adequately concealed on your person for the most part. Teachers are way too close to their students all the time, and the students will at some point see that ankle holster, see that shoulder holster, see that inside the waistband holster. You're not going to be able to keep it concealed. They're going to know you have it. And if a student knows you have it and they're bigger and stronger than you, then they're going to have it. I mean, if they want it, if they're one of these crazy kids, okay? Because the gun belongs to whoever can take possession of it. And there are many many students that I wouldn't even want to mess with, okay? And I'm a 6'1", 200-pound guy, and so it's just carrying guns around on their person by the average school teacher in a concealed carry kind of a situation every day, I just think is a poor idea. Too many bad things and not enough good things. Plus, what do you do when you have some teacher that's isn't responsible enough to do that, okay? How do you tell them no when you're telling other people yes? I mean, I don't think the HR departments are ready to fight those battles, okay? I just don't. Now, I'm not opposed. In fact, I think there should be an armed person in every building, whether that's a cop, an administrator, or somebody that has very, very good training and a very, very good skill set to do that, okay? But your average everyday teacher carrying a gun around with them all the time, I think is a bad idea. Now, I'll talk about the things that will work later, so I don't want to go more on guns right this second, but just arming a whole bunch of teachers is really, I think, not a good idea. Okay. Banning guns in general. First of all, it'll never happen. And even if it did happen, there's so many guns out there that they can get them anyway. And it's really, again, people say it all the time, it's not guns that kill people, it's people that kill people, and that's true. Okay, just on the news today, we had some bombings in Austin, Texas. Somebody's using bombs down there to blow things up. So mass killers figure out a way to do it, okay? And really all you're doing is the good people that have guns, you're making it harder on them, and there's no reason to do that. I mean, we're not going to change our way of life for 1 in 6.8 million odds a year. Just not going to do it. All right, so what will work, okay? Number one is threat assessment teams. Every building needs to have people on their staff or that can come to their building and look at cases where you have kids that are exhibiting these antisocial or dangerous behaviors. And the teachers are going to be really in the best position to identify the kids that are potentially, killers isn't the right word, potentially have these brain defects where they could be a dangerous person. And I think law enforcement's going to have to be involved on these teams. hopefully some psychiatrists or psychologists. If not, at least guidance counselors that have gone to some advanced training on how to spot these warning signs on these kids. And then there need to be interventions taken. Every kid's going to be different. Some are going to have decent support systems at home, some are not. Some are going to have a lot of free time, some are not. Some are going to have access to weapons, some are not. So it's an individual case-by-case thing, but you have to head these kids off at the pass, because once they've gotten to the point where they've decided they're going to do a school shooting and they have the resources to do it, preventing them from coming in and doing it at that point is probably not going to work. I mean, I've had some terrorism training too as a police officer, and it's kind of the same thing with terrorists. You need to get them at the bomb building stage, or at the research stage, or at the scouting stage when they're scouting their target. If you wait until they actually have the bomb and they're coming to put it at the building, the odds of you stopping them are not good. Okay? Same with a school shooter. Once they leave their house with the rifle on their back or the bag full of handguns, your odds of stopping them are not good. Okay? Because they will have had months and months to plan. So, threat assessment teams, number one, get on the kids early that you think are potential shooters, or just going down that road. Second thing, you need to have some type of an armed presence in the building. I mentioned it earlier, but you need to have a quality person or persons, and it's going to be persons if it's a big building, okay? Because if you only got one and they're off sick that day, you're out of luck. If you only have one and they're at the opposite end of the building, you're out of luck. Okay, so depending on how big your school is, you may need more than one, but you do need to have some armed response capability in your building. And those people need to be the right people, and they need to be trained well. As a school resource officer, we did training like that. They had us do simunitions training in an environment with a lot of noise, a lot of screaming people running around, and your ability to shoot a target that is down a hallway from you when there's innocent people in between you and them, and there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of running around and you're not sure exactly what's going on yet. It is a way, way different situation than somebody standing there at a pistol range trying to hit a target 20 feet away. Okay, so you gotta train these people multiple times a year, year over year over year, to have the skill set to operate, in that environment, in that kind of a situation. If you sell that short, really all you're doing is you're having extra bullets flying around in an undisciplined way, and that is more dangerous for the innocent people around than not even having the gun, somebody else with a gun. Okay, so right person, right training, and it's got to be ongoing. So threat assessment teams, some type of an armed response capability in your building. Number three, classrooms that are well protected from the hallway with doors. Okay, good, solid, heavy doors, and some type of mechanism to lock them so they can't be opened from the outside. Your school shooting incidents are over in 5 minutes or less generally, and they're going to go around looking for targets of opportunity. If they come to a solid, heavy door that's locked, they are probably not going to try to breach that door. And if they do, they're just wasting time, which translates into saving lives somewhere else. So you got to get the door locked. It's got to be heavy enough to withstand a little bit of an assault on the door, and everybody's got to be trained to do it quickly. So that's probably the number one place you could spend money if you want to increase your survivability at your buildings. Okay. Another thing you need is some type of a way for a classroom teacher to fight back against this intruder. Now, this is where the firearms come in. If you have a teacher who is willing to do the training to use a firearm in the building, and I'm not talking about a person who's going to go out and hunt this killer in the hallways. I'm talking about a person who wants to be able to defend their little classroom and their class against an armed intruder. I'm not totally opposed to that concept, but that firearm needs to be in some type of a permanently mounted, locked deal in the classroom itself, and it should be accessible to that teacher only, and only in this situation where they're defending their individual classroom. Now, I would rather them not do that. I would rather them not use the firearm, because I don't want them firing into the hallway either and hitting the cops or somebody else that's out there because they don't know what they're doing. Okay, it's just, anytime you bring a firearm in, it could be death on the other end of it. And if you got the right person doing the job, but even the right person, I mean, cops sometimes shoot, bystanders inadvertently, okay? It's just so much pressure and so much responsibility that I don't know if the risk outweighs the reward, or the reward outweighs the risk is what I mean. So I'd rather see them have something like a pepper fogger, a big heavy duty fire extinguisher size pepper gas gun that low tech, easy to use, very effective, and if you make a mistake with it, it's not a fatal mistake. So I'm a fan of all these classrooms having some kind of an emergency box that has one of these pepper foggers, some type of a device to break windows in case your class needs to escape from the building through a window, and get a first aid kit or something else in there, whatever you want to put in there, but needs to have that defensive tool in there. So we've got threat assessment teams, armed person in the building, armored classrooms, some type of a way for teachers to defend themselves in the building, and then lastly, some type of a way to notify the building quickly in the event of a school shooter. So it should be something completely different from the fire alarm, completely different from the tornado sirens. It can be a phrase, it could be a tone, but it needs to let everybody know what's going on unmistakably, and that it's serious, that you would never really drill this. It would just be, this is a real deal, and prepare. So on to training, okay? Training with teachers, training with staff, training with students. It's something we need to talk about here just real quick. I think you need to train teachers like crazy, okay? They need to know what they can and can't do, and that they have the ability with their class to flee. If they make the decision to flee the building, they can do that. If they decide they're going to hide, they can do that. If they want to fight back, they can do that. The most modern training that's available says, hey, get your class ready to defend itself. Something they can throw, something they can hit with, something they can attack with. If that, some of these classrooms have windows in the doors, if have someone next to the doorway, so if a weapon is inserted into the room through that gap, or if the bad guy comes into the room, they need to be immediately engaged and grabbed and held, because if everybody just goes in the corner and ducks and hides and puts their head between their knees, the guy's just going to walk around shooting you. I mean, it's been proven time and time again, even way back in the 90s, that's just not going to be very effective. So fight back, get some tiger in you and get going. I mean, it's an uphill battle, but what else you got, So train with your teachers, do not train with your students. A lot of people say train the students. I say don't train the students. Do football teams going into a Super Bowl, do they tell the other team they're going to play what their defense is going to be? Do they, does our military tell the Russians, hey, this is what our defensive capabilities are? No, we keep it a secret. Your school shooters are your students, okay? Don't tell the potential school shooter what you intend to do if there's a school shooting. I mean, in one of the schools I was in, they had this great idea, well, hey, let's have everybody go to the stadium, and then we can take, we can do roster and make sure everybody's accounted for. Schools are big on accountability. Well, I would rather tell a parent, hey, I don't know where your kid is. He was last seen running towards that neighborhood, than say, oh, yeah, I know where your kid is. He's dead over here on the floor, okay? Forget about the accountability thing, and forget about training your students. If your school shooter knows that everybody's going to go to the football stadium when they run out of the building, then why wouldn't they just either put a bomb at the stadium or else just be waiting at the stadium with the rifle when everybody flees there? I mean, you don't advertise what you're going to do. So train the teachers. It doesn't take a lot of instruction with a high school or middle school age kids to get them to do something in an emergency. So if a teacher hears this tone that there's an active shooter in the building, they go lock their classroom door. Then they immediately tell Jimmy, Joe, grab that desk, push it over in front of the door. Mary, Katie, grab that chair, go break that window out in the corner of the classroom and get ready. Somebody else get that carpet off the floor. We're going to put it over the window so we can crawl out if we have to in a minute. They're going to see the intensity in that teacher's approach, and they're going to know it's not goof around time. Okay, now they may hesitate for a second, but they're going to do it, But you got to train the teachers to be directive, precise, and know how to set their individual classroom up for defense in that instance. But you don't need to tell the students ahead of time what the plan is, okay? Nor do you need to tell the community what the plan is. You're always going to have these parents that want to know, well, what are you going to do if a school shooter comes? This is your response. We have implemented procedures that give us the best possible chance to protect ourselves in the event of a school shooting. We choose not to discuss that with anybody outside the building for obvious reasons. Okay? That's simple. I don't know if that was 2 sentences or 3, but it's very simple. Yet it's so hard for people to say because they want to talk. They want to tell everybody how great what we're doing is. Well, what you're doing is you're telling everybody else what you're planning to do to defend your building, which allows that kid who has months and months to plan, give them the best chance to make an effective plan. Okay? Train the teachers, don't train the students. So I guess my last thing is, don't change our way of life. I mean, we're talking about changing the Constitution when people are talking about getting rid of guns. Okay? We're talking about when people are talking about bulletproof glass all over the first floors of the building and metal detectors. You're basically turning your building into a fortress. You know, there goes the outdoor recess, there goes the outdoor phys ed classes. I mean, these kids already aren't getting outside enough and getting enough exercise. We're already, it's kind of an oppressive environment sometimes in some of these schools anyway, okay? We need to be able to breathe, okay? We need to be able to have some fun at school. We need to feel free. America was based on freedom and liberty. And unfortunately, with liberty and freedom sometimes comes some additional dangers, okay? But don't let 1 in 6.8 million chances per year change the entire way that we grow up in the country, okay? We can't live in fear all the time. Deal with, do the best you can, but don't beat yourselves up when it occasionally happens, because there are crazy people out there and there are evil people out there, and occasionally they're going to win. Occasionally, okay? Thanks for taking the time to watch it. Obviously, leave comments, suggestions, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it made some sense. So, thank you.